The man on the porch. The late afternoon sun hovered over the quiet suburban street like a tired spotlight, casting long shadows across the row of townhomes. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone assumed nothing bad ever happened, the kind of place where the loudest noise was a lawnmower or a dog that barked at its own reflection. A peaceful place, at least on the surface. A man sat on the wooden steps of one of the houses, calm, composed, and dressed in a simple black hoodie and jeans. He looked like any other man taking a quiet moment outside his home, staring at the sunset. But even from a distance, there was something different about him, something unspoken, something sharp behind the stillness in his eyes. His name was Elias Mercer. To the neighbors, he was the quiet one. Never caused trouble, never raised his voice, never hosted loud gatherings, mowed his lawn every Sunday morning, waved politely, paid his taxes on time. A simple man with a quiet routine, or so they thought. What no one knew, what no one could have guessed, was that Elias Mercer was not just a homeowner, not just another face in the neighborhood. He was a high-ranking FBI counterintelligence agent, one of the most decorated undercover operatives in the field, a ghost in plain sight. The kind of man whose identity was protected by layers of sealed records and encrypted databases. But today, none of that mattered. Because today, to three police officers speeding down the road toward him, Elias Mercer was not an FBI agent. He was just a black man sitting on a porch in a nice neighborhood. The patrol car pulled up hard, tires screeching, as if responding to an armed robbery instead of a man sitting calmly in front of his own home. Two officers jumped out immediately, hands already near their holsters. A third stayed behind the wheel with a radio in hand, eyes narrowed. Elias didn't move. He'd seen this before, too many times, both on the streets and in the reports that crossed his desk. He knew exactly how quickly things could go wrong. And because he knew, he stayed still. Officer number 1, a tall man with a shaved head and an attitude that entered the scene before he did, barked, "Sir, stand up, now!" Elias looked at him with the slow, deliberate calm of someone who had already calculated every possibility. "This is my house," he said quietly. "That wasn't a request," the officer snapped. "Stand up. Keep your hands where we can see them." Elias exhaled, slow and controlled. Not afraid, just disappointed. "Again, may I ask why I'm being approached?" he said, tone polite, measured, professional. Officer number 2, already circling the porch, chimed in with a smirk. "Because someone reported a suspicious person trespassing. And here you are." The accusation hung in the air. Trespassing. On his own property. Elias didn't respond immediately. He studied the officers, not with fear, but with the same analytical gaze he'd used while debriefing hostile witnesses, traitors, and foreign operatives. Their posture, their voice tones, their aggression level, their lack of patience. They weren't here to assess. They were here to control. "I live here," Elias repeated. "You can check the mailbox. The name matches my ID." "Oh, we're gonna check," Officer number 1 said, stepping closer. "But first, stand up. Hands visible. Now." Elias slowly rose. Not because he feared them, but because he knew escalation was a game only fools and dead men tried to win. His hands were steady, open, fingers slightly spread. Then came the line. That line he had read in so many incident reports. That line that always showed up before things got ugly. "If you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about." Elias almost laughed. Not out loud, but inside, where the irony burned like acid. Nothing to worry about. Unless wearing the wrong skin in the wrong zip code now counted as suspicious activity. Officer number 2 stepped behind him, hand brushing the cuffs on his belt. "You got ID on you?" "Yes," Elias answered. "Inside my wallet." "Back pocket." The officers glanced at each other like they'd caught him in a lie. Elias stayed still. "Slowly," Officer number 1 ordered. "Remove it." 2 fingers. "Don't make any sudden moves." Elias did exactly that. Calm, controlled, a model of compliance. He handed over the wallet. The officer opened it, and for a brief second, The world seemed to freeze. There it was. His ID, his name, his address. His photo, the officer stared at it, but something shifted in his face. Confusion, irritation, and something uglier. The kind of look that said, "This doesn't fit the story I already decided about you. This doesn't prove anything," the officer muttered. "Could be fake. House title records are online," Elias said evenly. "You're welcome to verify," Officer number 2 scoffed. "Oh, so now you're giving us instructions?" "I'm offering clarity," Elias replied. "That's all." Officer number 1 snapped the wallet shut and shoved it back at him. "Step off the porch." "Turn around. We're detaining you until we confirm." "Detaining me? For being at my own residence?" Elias asked. "You're resisting instructions," the officer said. "Last warning." Elias stared at them, 3 armed men who thought power made them right. He felt no panic, only the heavy weight of déjà vu. This wasn't new. This wasn't shocking. This was America on loop. What they didn't know was that every second of this was already being recorded. His front porch camera, 2 security cams, and a body cam feed he could pull from federal servers with a 2-sentence email. What they didn't know was who they were talking to. He could end this with a single phone call, but he didn't. Because part of him wanted to see how far they would go. Officer number 2 grabbed his arm. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Elias didn't move. "Not yet?" His voice was low, controlled, almost too calm. "Officer, before you continue, I strongly recommend you ask dispatch to run my name through the federal clearance database." "Oh yeah?" the officer said mockingly. "And why's that?" "Because what you're about to do," Elias said, "will be the biggest mistake of your career." For a moment, just a moment, silence. Then Officer number 1 laughed. "Yeah, sure. And I'm the president." Elias looked at him. "No," he said. "But you're about to wish you acted like someone was watching." Officer number 2 yanked his wrist harder. Officer number 1 reached for the cuffs. And Elias Mercer made a decision. He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet their eyes, and spoke the kind of sentence that rewrites a room. "You're detaining a federal agent." The grip on his arm froze, a flicker of doubt. A moment of instability. Then the officer snarled, "Yeah? Prove it." And Elias smiled. Not because this was funny, but because the trap was officially closed. "I already have," he said. "You just haven't realized it yet." His phone buzzed. Unknown number. But Elias already knew who it was, and the moment he answered, everything was going to change. The call that changed everything. The phone kept buzzing in Elias's pocket, a steady vibration that cut through the tension like a blade. The officers didn't know who was calling. They didn't know what door they were standing in front of, not physically, but politically, legally, and professionally. To them, this was still a routine stop, a suspicious person, a formality they expected to control. But to Elias, this was the moment the game shifted. Officer number 1 barked, "Don't touch that phone." "It's already ringing," Elias replied calmly. "And trust me. You want me to answer it?" Something in his tone, calm, unwavering, too steady for a man being detained, made the officer hesitate. Not out of respect, but out of confusion. Arrogance had built this situation. Doubt was now cracking it. Officer number 2 tightened his grip on Elias's arm, as if trying to regain dominance through pressure alone. "You move again without permission, you're going face down on the ground. You understand me?" Elias didn't even look at him. His eyes were on the officer still holding his wallet. "I understand you're running out of time to do the right thing." The phone stopped buzzing. Silence. Then, one single vibration, a voicemail. But before any of them could react, the phone started ringing again. This time, Elias spoke before they could. "I'm going to answer," he said. "If you want to keep your job, I suggest you let me." Officer number 1 stared at him, jaw tense. "Why, who is it?" Elias didn't blink. "Your boss's boss's boss." That earned a scoff. "I told you to drop the attitude," but the third officer, the younger one, still by the patrol car, the only one not barking commands, finally spoke up. "Wait," he said, frowning. Run his name first, just in case. We can't. Officer number 1 cut him off. We don't need to run anything. I know what I'm looking at. Guy's stalling. Trying to intimidate us. Standard routine. But the younger officer didn't look convinced. His instincts had been activated. Not by fear, but by something he still had that the others seemed to have lost. Humility. Sir, he said quietly to Elias, what agency did you say you were with? I didn't, Elias replied. But you should ask dispatch to run Mercer, Elias Jonathan. Badge clearance Echo 7 Black. Officer number 1 rolled his eyes. Oh, perfect. He knows the alphabet. Elias's phone buzzed again. Same number. This time it wasn't a call. It was a text. 3 words. Answer. Now. DC. Elias didn't react outwardly, but inside he knew this wasn't going to stay small for long. Whoever was calling had already been alerted by one of his silent pings, a system designed for field agents under threat, activated the minute the officers ran his plates. He wasn't just being watched, he was being tracked at the federal level. The officers just didn't know they were the ones in danger. He finally spoke. If I don't answer this call, Elias said slowly, a level 3 protocol will trigger. And trust me, you do not want to be the reason that happens. Officer number 1 leaned in, face full of arrogant disbelief. You think you can scare us with some spy movie garbage? Elias met his eyes, unblinking. I don't need to scare you. And why's that? Because the people who scare you, Elias said, are already on their way. A beat of silence. Then, the phone rang again. This time, the younger officer made a move. Sergeant, he said urgently, just let him answer. If we're wrong, we're exposed. Sergeant. So officer number 1 finally had a name. Sergeant Holt. Holt didn't like being challenged, especially not by a junior. We're not wrong, he snapped. He's bluffing. Badge or no badge, he still answers to us on this street. Elias almost smiled, spoken like a man who had never met anyone truly above him. He finally reached into his pocket. Slow, deliberate, giving them every chance to stop him. They didn't. He answered on. Speaker. Mercer, he said. The voice that came through wasn't loud, but it carried authority that could freeze a courtroom. Agent Mercer, the voice said. Status. 3 pairs of eyes widened. Even Sergeant Holt stiffened. Not sir. Not hey. Not who's this. Agent Mercer. Elias spoke plainly. Currently being detained by local police officers outside my residence. No injuries. Not escalating, yet. Silence. Then, one tight. Controlled breath from the caller. Put the lead officer on the phone. Sergeant Holt hesitated, glanced at the younger cop, then at Elias, then at the phone like it was a grenade. I don't take orders from... Sergeant, Elias said quietly. You want to take this call? Holt's jaw worked, ego and instinct waging war inside him. But something in that voice, something about the calmness made him reach. He took the phone. This is Sergeant Holt. Who am I speaking with? He didn't finish. The voice on the other end cut him off. You're speaking to Assistant Director Caldwell, Counterintelligence Division, FBI Headquarters. Badge verification code, Alpha 9717. You've just detained one of my agents. Congratulations. You have 60 seconds to explain why. Holt's face drained of color so fast it looked like someone unplugged him. The younger officer took a step back. Officer number 2 froze with the cuffs half raised. Elias didn't move. The voice continued. Sharper now. You are currently violating federal detainment law, obstructing a cleared agent, and unlawfully restricting movement on private property. If Agent Mercer is not immediately released, I will activate emergency jurisdiction override and you will be relieved of duty before your next breath. Do you understand me? Holt swallowed. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Caldwell didn't wait. You have 30 seconds, Sergeant. Choose wisely. Apology, release, and report filing, or internal affairs, suspension, and a federal lawsuit that will follow you for the rest of your career. The phone went silent. But Caldwell wasn't done. And Sergeant, just so we're clear, we already have the body cam footage. All of it. Holt's arm dropped to his side. He didn't speak for several seconds. When he finally did, his voice was small, nothing like the man shouting orders minutes ago. "Yes, sir. Good. Hand the phone back to my agent." He did. No resistance now. Elias raised it to his ear. "Agent Mercer," Caldwell said, voice softening. "Confirm you're okay." "I'm fine," Elias replied. "No injuries? No force used yet?" "Yet," Caldwell repeated. "Noted. Do you want federal follow-up?" Elias paused. His eyes moved over the officers. 3 very different men, 3 different futures. He could destroy them with a sentence. End their careers. Push this all the way up the chain. But that wasn't justice. That was vengeance pretending to wear the same suit. His voice was calm. "Not yet. I want to see how they choose to end this." There was silence on the line. Then a slow, approving exhale. "Understood. Your call, Agent. But if they touch you again, I send the cavalry." The line ended. Elias slid the phone back into his pocket. No one moved. Then, Sergeant Holt, the man who came in barking commands, stepped back and looked at Elias not as a suspect, but as a man who had just exposed how small his authority really was. He opened his mouth, but Elias stopped him. "Don't apologize yet," he said. "Why not?" Holt asked quietly. "Because I'm not done," Elias answered. "And neither are you." Officer number 2 shifted. The younger officer watched, unsure whether to breathe. Elias stepped down one stair, slow, steady, eyes never leaving theirs. "You came here certain you were right," he said. "You treated me like a problem before you even asked a question." "Not because of what I did, but because of what I look like." Holt didn't argue. He couldn't. "And if I wasn't who I am," Elias continued, "I'd be in cuffs right now, or worse." Officer number 2 finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" Elias looked at him. "That depends on whether you want to learn, or just walk away." And before anyone could ask what he meant, a second patrol car turned the corner. Lights on. Back up. But this time, the situation was about to flip completely. When the backup arrives. The second patrol car rolled to a stop at the curb, lights still flashing but sirens silent. The engine idled with a low rumble, the kind that announces authority before a single word is spoken. The door opened and out stepped Lieutenant Marissa Kane, a woman whose calm command presence instantly separated her from the chaos she had just arrived to. She was mid-40s, sharp-eyed with a posture that said she was used to walking into disasters and walking out with the truth. Her hand rested on her holster, not in threat but in readiness. She did not draw. She did not rush. She assessed. Her gaze swept the scene in 3 clean beats. Elias, Sergeant Holt, the other 2 officers frozen beside him. No raised voices. No weapons drawn. But the tension was unmistakable, thick enough to taste. "What's going on here?" Kane asked. Sergeant Holt opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He glanced at Elias first, an instinct Kane did not miss. That alone told her something was wrong. She turned her gaze to Elias, not with accusation, not with suspicion, but with professional curiosity. "Sir, are you being detained?" Elias answered calmly. "Not officially, but unofficially?" "Yes." That landed hard, and Holt knew it. Kane's tone sharpened, not hostile, but surgical. "Sergeant, explanation. Now." Holt swallowed. "We received a call about a trespasser. We made contact. The subject refused to comply at first, then claimed to be a federal agent." "Claimed," Elias repeated softly. "Past tense." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Did you run his ID?" Holt hesitated again. The pause was the answer. "You didn't run it," Kane said flatly. "You detained a man without confirming identity?" Officer number 2 shifted. The younger officer looked at the ground. Kane looked at Elias again. "Sir, do you have identification on you?" Elias nodded. "Yes, they already saw it." Kane held out her hand. "May I see it myself?" Elias didn't hesitate. He handed her the wallet. She flipped it open, eyes scanning the license, then the second card tucked behind it, the one with a seal. A federal seal. She froze for just a second. Her eyes lifted. "Agent?" Elias nodded once. Kane inhaled, slow, measured. The kind of breath taken when adrenaline meets reality. Did they verify your credentials? No, Elias said. They chose to escalate first. Kane's jaw tensed, not in anger at Elias, but at the situation her department now stood neck-deep in. She turned to Holt. You detained a federal agent on his own property. He didn't identify himself immediately, Holt muttered. He didn't have to, Kane snapped. He was sitting on his porch. That's not probable cause. That's not even suspicious behavior, Holt bristled. We got a call. You got a call, Kane cut in sharply. And you let bias fill in the rest. No one spoke. Even the backup car seemed to fall silent. Then Elias spoke. Calm, deliberate, the voice of a man who was used to briefing senators, not street officers. Lieutenant Kane, I made it very clear I lived here. I offered verification. I complied. I gave my ID. I suggested they run a federal database check. They declined. Kane looked at him fully now, as if seeing past the hoodie, the calm face, the stillness. Seeing the agent, the man behind the silence, she nodded once. Agent Mercer, I apologize on behalf of the department. This is not how this should have gone. It's not the first time, Elias said, and we both know it won't be the last. Kane didn't deny it. Holt finally snapped, ego cracking under the weight of exposure. This is still police protocol. No, Kane said, and her voice was suddenly ice. This is abuse of authority, and you're lucky he's the one you tried it on. Officer number 2 shifted like the ground just moved under him. The younger officer finally spoke. Lieutenant, he warned us. Told us to run his name. We didn't. Kane didn't look at him with anger, just something quietly disappointed. You listened, she said. That matters, a small nod. A moment of dignity salvaged, but then Holt tried again. We didn't know. That's the problem, Elias said. You assumed the worst before asking the most basic question. Kane turned back to him. Agent Mercer, do you wish to file a formal complaint? The street almost held its breath. It was a simple question, but the weight of it was enormous, because a federal complaint wouldn't just be paperwork. It would be internal affairs, state review, civil rights litigation, and national headlines. The kind that make departments scramble and city officials memorize apology scripts. Elias didn't answer immediately. He looked at each of the officers, slowly. Not judging, but evaluating. Sergeant Holt, pride in a uniform but none in the oath. Officer number 2, follower not thinker. Officer number 3, the only one who paused, who questioned, who saw a man instead of a threat. He turned back to Kane. I'm not interested in destroying careers, Elias said. I'm interested in changing behavior. Kane nodded slowly. And how do you propose we do that? Elias stepped forward, not aggressively, but with intentional presence. When the world finds out. By sundown, the street was quiet again. Patrol cars gone, officers dispersed. Lieutenant Kane stayed the longest, speaking with Elias in low professional tones, promising a full internal review, offering direct contact, asking questions with genuine concern rather than obligation. She left her card. Elias accepted it, but didn't say whether he'd use it. When she finally drove away, the stillness returned. But it wasn't the same stillness as before. It was the kind of quiet that happens before a storm. Elias sat back on his porch, the same step where everything had begun. Same hoodie, same expression, but something was different about the air now. Charged, uneasy, heavier than before. It wasn't over. Not even close, because he knew the world outside this street was already shifting, and not because of what he said or did, but because someone else had already taken the wheel, the neighbor with the phone. She hadn't filmed the beginning. She hadn't filmed the ending. She filmed the moment the badge came off Holt's chest. The moment the power dynamic flipped like a table. The moment the truth didn't whisper, it roared, and 3 hours later... The internet got it, no context, no explanation. Just a 37-second clip labeled, Cops Try to Arrest Black Man for Trespassing. Turns out he's FBI. It spread like oxygen meeting a flame. Twitter, 10K retweets in an hour. TikTok, 400K views in 3. YouTube re-uploads, dozens, multiplying. Hashtags, our porch agent. Wrong house, right man. They stopped the FBI. The clip didn't show Holt's face clearly, but it showed enough. The tone, the aggressive posture, the sudden silence when the word agent was spoken. The badge being removed. The badge being handed over. Public imagination didn't need the missing pieces. It built them. The comment section lit up like riot lights. They only backed off because they found out he was FBI. Imagine if he wasn't. So basically, the uniform only respects power, not people. They didn't see a citizen. They saw a target. He had to be federal to survive being on his own porch. What does that say? And then the one that cut the deepest. The only difference between a statistic and a headline was a badge in his wallet. By midnight, news outlets picked it up. Local station first, then regional. Then national reporters didn't have a name, but they had a title. Unidentified black federal agent detained by police outside his own home. Some thought it was fake. Some thought it was staged. Others, too many, said it was familiar. And in living rooms across the country, people who had never met Elias Mercer felt the same quiet, angry recognition. He survived because he had the right title, not because he had the right to be there, but in the midst of the chaos. One group was not confused. The FBI was furious, not because Elias was mistreated, though they'd never admit that publicly, but because a federal agent being mishandled by local law enforcement on camera was not just a PR problem, it was a jurisdictional earthquake. Internal emails flew through encrypted networks. Clearance compromised. Public. Narrative forming without control. Identify. Agent before leak does. This cannot escalate into federal versus local conflict. But the thing no one in Washington expected was that Elias wasn't running from the spotlight. He was watching, listening, waiting, and he didn't post. He didn't comment. He didn't correct or confirm anything online, because Elias knew the first rule of real power. You don't react, you shape. So while the internet rioted and the FBI scrambled, Elias did something no one expected. He went to work the next morning. Same coffee, same suit, same badge. But the moment he entered the federal building, whispers followed. Agents at security glanced longer than usual. Analysts in the elevators paused their conversations. Supervisors in glass offices looked up from their screens. He wasn't just an agent now. He was the story. And when he reached his floor, the assistant director himself was waiting for him. Caldwell, same voice from the phone. Same tone that could cut through steel, but in person he didn't look angry. He looked calculating. Agent Mercer, Caldwell said. Walk with me. They didn't go to his office. They went to an off-record briefing room. The kind without windows, without cameras, without logs. When the door closed, Caldwell spoke first. You realize this situation is no longer containable. Elias said nothing. Caldwell continued. You're trending on 3 platforms. Civil rights groups are demanding your identity. Local stations want interviews. The mayor's office has called twice, and internal affairs from their department is already trying to make us fix their problem. Still, Elias didn't speak. Do you understand what happens if your name becomes public? Caldwell asked. Yes, Elias replied. And you're calm? I'm always calm. Caldwell studied him. You could file a federal case right now and win. You could sue the city. You could have that officer fired, charged, blacklisted. I know. So what do you want? There it was. The question no one else would have asked him, honestly. Elias sat forward. I want one thing, he said. And it's not revenge. Caldwell waited. I want this on record, Elias continued. Not just mine. Every case like it. Every suspicious person stop. Every badge that wasn't believed. Every porch that became a crime scene because of skin. Caldwell blinked, not in surprise, but in recognition. You want systemic accountability, he said, not punishment. Punishment dies with one officer, Elias said. Accountability changes the next one, Caldwell exhaled. You know that's not how the machine works. It will, Elias said. If someone starts pulling the right wires. Caldwell leaned back. So you plan to make this public? No, Elias said. Not yet. Then what? Elias's eyes sharpened. I want the department to come to me. For what? For a solution. Caldwell stared at him for a long moment. Most men in your position would want blood. Most men in their position expect silence, Elias replied. And you won't give it to them? No, Elias said. I'll give them a choice. Caldwell nodded slowly. And if they choose wrong? Elias finally smiled. Then the internet will finish what they started. Caldwell looked at him, not as a subordinate, not as a case file, but as a weapon pointed at the system itself. You know this path makes you a target, he said. I've been a target, Elias replied. This time I get to choose why. The room went silent. Then Caldwell stood. Agent Mercer, he said, as of this morning, the Bureau is officially assigning you as liaison to the review board of the incident. Elias raised an eyebrow. Voluntarily? No, Caldwell said. Strategically. For who? For whoever realizes you're not the victim in this story. And who am I? Caldwell gave a thin smile. The man who decides whether this becomes a headline or a reckoning. Elias nodded once. Then I'll need a meeting with the police chief. You'll get it, Caldwell said. But there's something you need to know first. What? The officer you got suspended? Caldwell said. He's not silent. And he's not done. Elias didn't react. Caldwell's voice dropped. He's already contacted legal counsel. Claims you abused authority. Claims you threatened him. He's going on record to say the FBI is intimidating him. Elias stood. So he's trying to flip the narrative. Yes, Caldwell said. And if he gets there first, people will believe him. Elias started toward the door. Then it's time I tell the story myself. Where are you going? Elias paused. To speak to the only group this country listens to, he said. Caldwell frowned. Who? Elias turned, eyes calm, voice steady. The public. The man who spoke. Elias didn't call a press conference. He didn't post a long statement online. He didn't go to a reporter or leak internal files. He did something far simpler and far more powerful. He agreed to one live interview. No editing, no cutting, no spin, no delay, one camera, one chair, one voice. The network expected him to come in suit and tie, badge visible, bureau posture straight and polished. He didn't. He walked into the studio the same way he walked onto his porch that day, black hoodie. Calm eyes, stillness that felt louder than shouting. When the lights came on, the anchor began the usual introduction. Tonight we are joined by the man at the center of a national conversation. Identified only recently as, Elias cut in gently, I'm not here to talk about myself. The anchor paused. Thrown off. I'm here, Elias continued, to talk about what happens when the wrong assumptions meet the wrong authority. And the wrong skin tone. The studio fell silent. No rehearsed speech, no anger. No dramatics, just truth, delivered with precision. I am a federal agent, Elias said. But that's not why I'm alive today. He let that sink in. I'm alive because the officers who approached me eventually found out my title. Not my name, not my character, not my humanity, my title. Without that title, I would have been treated like a threat. Because before I was anything else, I was black. And that was enough. The anchor didn't interrupt. Elias continued. I've worked national security for 12 years. I've sat across from foreign spies, cartel leaders, war zone informants, and I've learned something they all shared in common. He leaned forward, voice still low, still calm. They believed the law was a tool, not a principle. A beat of silence. That's what we saw on my porch. Not policing. Power with no accountability. A badge doesn't make a person dangerous. The belief that they can't be questioned does. Cameras zoomed slowly. His eyes didn't flinch. I'm not the first man this has happened to. I'm just the first one who already had the federal government behind him when it did. He paused. And that's the problem. The anchor finally spoke. So what do you want to happen now, Agent Mercer? Elias shook his head. No. Don't call me Agent Mercer right now. The room shifted. Call me what those officers saw. A black man on a porch. You could feel the weight in the air. Elias continued. I don't want revenge. I don't want a payout. I don't want a settlement. I want a system that doesn't require a badge to survive a street interaction. I want a future where compliance isn't the only thing standing between a man and a morgue. The anchor took a breath. And how do we get there? Elias didn't hesitate. By making sure the people with power are held to the same standards as the people without it. By requiring transparency the same way we require obedience. By teaching officers not just how to control a scene, but how to recognize when they are the threat. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. And if this country is really the land of the free, then freedom shouldn't depend on whether your wallet contains a government credential. The interview ended not with applause, not with sensational headlines, but with silence. The kind that comes after a truth you can't comfortably ignore. The next 48 hours were a blur. The clip of Elias speaking went viral. Not the porch video this time, but his interview, his words, his presence, his calm fury. Schools used the speech in civics classes. Churches quoted him in sermons. Police academies debated him in lecture halls. Civil rights groups invited him to speak. The police chief finally called. He didn't send an email. He didn't send a lawyer. He requested a meeting face-to-face. The meeting police headquarters. Conference room. City officials. Department heads. Legal advisors. Lieutenant Kane. Elias. Sergeant Holt was there too. Not in uniform. Not seated. He sat alone in the corner, suit wrinkled, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. The look of a man who finally understood the weight of consequences. Too late to drop them. The chief began. Agent Mercer, we want to begin by acknowledging. I'm not here for an apology, Elias said. The room stiffened. Then what are you here for? The city attorney asked carefully. Elias placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavy, full. Every time someone was stopped for fitting the description in this city in the last 5 years. Every time a body cam was muted. Every time a civilian complaint vanished before review. The chief stared. How did you? I'm FBI, Elias said simply. You're not the first department I've vetted. Just the first one forced to look at itself publicly. Even the lawyers didn't speak. Elias continued. I don't want one officer fired. I want every officer retrained. I want civilian review panels with real voting authority. I want de-escalation mandates tied to funding. I want use of force reports going public quarterly, not buried in archives. The city attorney swallowed. That would mean completely reforming department protocol. Elias nodded. Exactly. And if we don't? The chief asked quietly. Elias didn't raise his voice. Then you'll be negotiating not with me, but with the millions of people who now know my name. Nobody breathed. He wasn't threatening. He was forecasting, and everyone in that room knew it. The decision. 2 weeks later, the city announced the following. Mandatory bias and de-escalation training for every officer. Independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power. Body cam tampering, hardware, automatic suspension pending review. Public transparency database for all street stops and detainments. Department-wide disciplinary reform based on incident patterns, not individual cases. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was public. Elias didn't celebrate. He didn't stand at a podium. Didn't claim victory, didn't post anything online. He went home, sat on his porch again. Same step, same stillness, same man, but this time, he wasn't alone. Neighbors approached, not with phones, not with suspicion, but with respect. Gratitude, curiosity. A teenage boy walked up shyly. My mom said you changed things, he said. Elias shook his head softly. No, I just refuse to stay. Quiet. The boy thought about that. You think things will be better now? Elias looked out at the street, the sunset, the quiet neighborhood that wasn't as quiet anymore, not because of danger, but because of awareness. They'll be better, he said. If people like you grow up expecting them to be. The boy nodded. Then, were you scared? Elias didn't answer immediately. Yes, he said. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to let fear choose your behavior for you. So what should I do when something's wrong? Elias smiled. Don't panic. Don't run. Don't fight. The boy waited. Just stand, speak, question, stay human. The world changes when people stop shrinking in front of injustice. The boy nodded again, this time with something brighter in his eyes. Hope. Weeks passed. The internet moved on. New headlines came. New outrage, new noise, but something stayed behind. A story, not of a man who fought police, not of a badge that saved a life, but of a moment that proved something simple. Justice is not a system. It is a decision to stand, a decision to speak, a decision to refuse silence even when silence is safer. And Elias? He kept his job, he kept his porch, he kept his peace because the world didn't need him to be loud. It needed him to be unshakable. There will always be people who think power makes them untouchable. There will always be people who think silence keeps them safe. And there will always be people who underestimate the quiet man who has nothing left to fear until he finally speaks. And when he does, it's not a voice they hear. It's a reckoning.